Good evening. This is the Secure Cyber Connect podcast with Jay Adamson and Warren Atkinson. Tonight, live from San Francisco and in the UK, we're joined by information and cybersecurity technology and talent acquisition professionals who share their journeys, unique perspectives, and offer advice and guidance. Our topics on this episode will be fighting ransomware with zero APT. Tonight, we're thrilled to be joined by Dan Regalado, a Chief Offensive Security Officer with a cybersecurity career spanning over 2 decades. Dan's been very much at the forefront of security research with organizations such as Symantec, FireEye, Mandiant, and Palo Alto Networks within Silicon Valley. He's also a co-author of the book Grey Hat Hacking and has been analyzing both ATM malware and tracking APTs for over 10 years now, since 2013. He's a renowned speaker, having featured the RSA in San Francisco, the RECon in Canada, and DefCon in Las Vegas. Dan is now working with Metabase Q, where he's leading the development of Zero APT, the next generation breach and attack simulation product designed to combat ransomware and emerging threats globally. Dan, we're privileged to have you on the podcast tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, guys, for having me. A pleasure for me to share with you guys this amazing initiative.
So Dan, we always sort of start things with a few questions very much around really what's brought you here today, a very brief high-level overview of what we're looking to discuss.
Yeah, I think we're going to be talking about cyber resilience. I think for the people listening to us, they will take away from to home like specific strategies for them to combat the threats that are out there, strategies for them to focus on what they need to do in order to reduce the impact, in order to reduce the risk, and in order to have a full and really nice technology and strategy for them to fight threats like ransomware that are out there hitting crazy organizations globally.
Fantastic. And I guess we always sort of start things by saying, look, would you be kind enough to share something with us that you may be proud of, excited about, that typically people wouldn't necessarily see on your LinkedIn profile, for example?
I'm a husband, a beautiful wife, and 2 kids. Well, I mean, not that kids, they are already in college, heading to college now. And I would say proud of me is like we moved from Mexico to US back in 2008. We're immigrants, and this moving from one country to another country is a huge step for us as a family. And I feel really proud for us as a family to be able to move into a new place and stay together and be ready to stay as a family as today.
Absolutely. What would you say would be one of the sort of main challenges that you faced in your career that you would say has significantly influenced your own perspective on cybersecurity?
Yeah, I think I have been chasing, as you mentioned, multiple actors globally, and eventually to what keeps me awake and actually to start thinking around it is how we can fight this organized crime out there, right? Like, to me, that's the main challenge that I always have in my mind. And that comes to this specific topic that we're discussing right now. Like, what motivates me is how we can come up with the strategies to be faster and better than those guys that are out there hitting our organizations, basically.
And that's brilliant. And I've obviously been tracking your career for quite some time, Dan. I've been privileged enough to see some of the talks that you give going back to 5 or 6 years ago, at DefCon, for instance. And I think some of the insights that you're talking about then, what you're a champion, is really relevant today. And that's what you're even more excited about today's session, because I think that the insights that you can provide are going to be relevant in 5 years' time.
I guess to effectively combat cyber threats, we first really need to understand the nature of ransomware and advanced sort of persistent threats, especially considering that ransomware attacks have increased considerably, somewhere around 70% in the last 12 months or so. What are typically the main characteristics of ransomware, Dan, and other advanced persistent threats, or APTs as they're known? How do they both differ in their attack methodologies, and what challenges do organizations sort of face in mitigating these threats?
Yeah, I mean, let's separate between ransomware and APTs. So those are based on 2 things, basically. One is sophistication and tactics and the goals they are following. And then when we think about the goal, ransomware is financial gain motivation. It's money. They are going after the money. That's why they are called crimeware in the crimeware family. But when we look at APTs, advanced persistent threats, their goal can be financial gain definitely, but not only that. It can be espionage. It can be like, I would say, infrastructure disruption. You notice like a critical infrastructure hitting like Stuxnet back in 2010, as you can remember, that this virus hit an Iranian nuclear plant. So it's not only money, but advanced persistent threats are more into politics, economics, and espionage and other things. That's like the goal when we separate for those two guys. The second thing is the advanced stuff, like how your arsenal is being used. Like in cybercrime, they are like using or reusing or buying tools from the market. In the other side, APTs, they actually create their own tools because IPTs are sponsored normally by nation states, right? Like North Korea, for example, they have a huge set of number of APTs totally sponsored by the government, and then they are totally dedicated with tools. So when you look at sophistication, that's another angle. So tactics is one, goals is the second one, and sophistication is the third one. That's when you separate APTs from ransomware in those different angles.
I think we see theft of intellectual property here being a sort of driver for nation states, especially nation-backed threat actors. And is there sort of a specific region that perhaps threat actors are coming from with that characteristic and that goal?
No, definitely, that's a very good one, Warren, because just to give you an example, between there is China and Mexico, there is a lot of this intellectual property going on, and that's actually cases where APTs is another point that I just missed to mention. The time they spend in the organization is longer than a crimeware. Crimeware gets in, get information out, and then they start charging. They start negotiating for money. And APTs can spend, it can be like for months in your organization. So when you think about like intellectual property, espionage, but those guys needs to be inside the company for longer side. It doesn't need to be for just 2 or 3 days. And then in your example that you just mentioned, I think in my mind comes back into an issue from China to Mexico, where Chinese people get into Mexican government in order to get and understand those different products coming out in the next government organization. And that's like stealing for months information that is actually one of the goals for APTs, right? Intellectual property, as you mentioned.
And plotting these innovative and offensive strategies is going to be crucial. We know that obviously offensive strategies are paramount for addressing these advanced threats, and that proactive threat hunting is clearly reducing the risk exposure. With regards to AI machine learning and how they need to improve those security measures, what are the most effective offensive strategies for combating ransomware and APTs? And how can sort of AI and machine learning be applied to enhance these security measures?
Well, that's a very good one, because today everyone talks about AI lately, but we need to keep in mind that AI has been for the last 10 years. And actually, we as a company, back in FireEye, Mandiant, when I was working for them in 2014, we were already using machine learning models back to fight APTs. So that's something not new. But today, with the explosion of ChatGPT and those things that now you can be easy your daily basis, you can just ask for a new code to be created. Now, like not security people is aware of this technology. I think that's the exposure of why now everyone knows about AI stuff. So thinking about these strategies, attackers are using AI. And attackers are using AI to be faster, as exactly the same as defenders. So this is an interesting topic, because today we as a company protecting our customers, we need to come up with AI in order to be faster to defend, because the attackers are also using AI to be faster to attack, to offend the enemy. So in this idea, we need to come up with strategies to create models, because in AI world, you talk about models. A model is like an engine that is gonna be trained to be able to respond in a smart way for you. You can train him to understand anomalous traffic going through your network. You can train these models to be able to respond in a broader way, right? So we as a defenders, we need to come up with AI for sure, because we need to be exactly as fast as the attackers. Otherwise, we're going to keep up with the movement of these guys going really fast.
I think that's a really important point. We had a guest on another one of our shows that spoke about sort of the prime difference between the LLM systems that perhaps security companies and vendors are using versus true AI, ones that can sort of think to themselves, contextualize and sort of adapt, as opposed to being a bit more,
Exactly. Very good point, Warren, because that's another thing. There is a lot of companies coming up saying, hey, we are AI based. We're AI based. And back in the engine, actually, it is static stuff. It is not real AI stuff. So we need to be careful as organizations to be really testing those technologies to make sure that it's real AI and it's not only bluff around it.
And are there any other sort of challenges that you can sort of suggest that businesses may find in terms of integrating offensive security tactics and working alongside those traditional prevention and detection methods so there's an effective balance?
Yeah, it is very important because there is a lot of stuff that must be done without AI. But when it comes down to AI, is when you need to be faster. Think about, you cannot have an army of 200 defenders, right? That's where AI comes in. So when you are able to train a system to able to either respond to a threat automatically, to be able to analyze hundreds of petabytes of data, so that's where you need AI. But that's when you need to really faster in order to have an army to do this analysis that is impossible to do it by a human. But the human is always needed because sometimes you need to have this granular, surgeon, specific and critical thinking. And that's happy for us because we will never be taken over by AI. At the end of the day, it's a combination of both. But as you mentioned, definitely, Jay, must be a balance between both, because you cannot always not only rely on AI. That's not a way. People always ask me, hey, Dan, can we build a system to automate the exploitation attacks and like do attacks and being created automated? That's not the reality. I mean, definitely it can help you to be faster, but at the end of the day, you must have a human in the other side controlling what's going on and taking the direction either from the attacker's perspective or from the defensive perspective, right?
And I think that we've seen a lot of examples that have obviously demonstrated the effectiveness of offensive security. And I think it was the SANS Institute that was saying around 65-70% of companies that had adopted offensive security measures had seen a big improvement in threat mitigation. Could you provide some examples yourself of some successful implementations of offensive security approaches that have improved threat mitigation?
I'm going to give you both in the offensive and defensive. And let's talk about defensive. The most common one is anomaly detection. Back in 2019, I created a company called Newman to protect cars, smart cars. And what we did was to train this infotainment. The infotainment is this small screen in your car that you see the radio, you see the videos. That's called infotainment in a car. So that comes in with Bluetooth, that comes in with NFC, a lot of different protocols and data coming in. So the way AI can be used in that side is to be able to train the system to tell them what is malicious and what is benign traffic. That's a very normal training of AI. That is an infotainment, but this can be done in your enterprise organization, traffic in your organization, traffic in the cloud, traffic in the car. So basically what it does is you just train your system in order to see this is benign and this is malicious, this is benign and this is malicious. And eventually, the model is going to be able to distinguish without any human intervention in order to distinguish between both. That's in the defensive side, and that's one of the huge ones that everyone is working on. In the offensive side, though, the way CRPT, for example, works is we are able to train the system to know, hey, this is the malicious actions, this is the tactics and techniques being used by an attacker. Understand it and train it. Now, I'm going to ask you, generate a new scenario that it doesn't exist even today, but you can use these multiple tactics and techniques and generate new scenarios for me to trigger into organization so that we can proactively test your technology. That's the malicious side where we can use AI to also train it to be proactive and to secure our companies.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So Dan, what technologies and best practices would you recommend for organizations aiming to adopt an offensive security stance? most common pitfalls that we should perhaps avoid, and also taking into consideration ethical use cases?
Yeah, I think that's a very good one, because normally in these 20 years of security, we understand about penetration testing. Penetration testing, for people that doesn't understand this security world, is a proactive way for you to use tools to find bugs in your organization. And then once you find those bugs, you get recommendation, right? That's penetration testing. But at the end of the day, that's a proactive way. And that's good. That has been there, and it's needed, by the way. It's needed. We're not saying we don't need it. It's needed. But now we need to move on into strategies on offensive on early detection. What that means is we need to assume that sooner or later we're going to be compromised. And that's a different approach. It's not about come to my organization and see if you can break into it. It's into, let's suppose that someone already broke into it, and now let's see how fast we are as an organization to detect that intrusion. That's early detection. So the faster you identify the intrusion, the better and the less impact you're going to have. So in offensive security, now we are seeing, and we highly recommend to not only be proactive in that side, as we said, penetration testing, but also to work on early detection technologies that is going to help you to sooner or later, and we knock the wood, but sooner or later, it's going to happen in our organization. And we need to be ready to measure those angles.
And from a sort of ethical standpoint, I think we spoke offline about sort of managing the rate of innovation. Prime example is an organization that I'm not going to mention on the podcast, but them rolling out an update across the globe that caused disruption. So there's obviously best practices that businesses can put in place, especially when it comes to upgrading systems or utilizing them. So what are those best practices, Dan? What we're suggesting on that front?
Yeah, well, there are different angles. So there is one angle in AI, which is down to confidentiality. That's a very important one. And the second one is obviously your control on how you can deploy these technologies in the organization. So in terms of confidentiality, it's very important to keep in mind, guys, that when you're using these models, you need to make sure that you have the proper policy in place, because sometimes all your data can go to the cloud, and to the cloud goes to everywhere. Just keep in mind that, for example, OpenAI, if you use a model that sometimes is not private, you can be training your information from your organization and moving everything to the cloud and giving it to everyone else. So that's very important to consider when doing AI implementation. You need to make sure to understand and the limitations and how you can avoid sharing information with the other side. And then the second side is about the deployment of these strategies, because sometimes, as we were mentioned before, sometimes it's so automated that we don't want to rely on humans, and then sometimes this second check can take place and then can give us some deployment issues, as we saw in other organizations back in 2 months ago. So something around those lines. But in that deployment side, we need to be ready to have this combination of humans and automation in order to avoid fully automation of those. Because just to close this thing, we're seeing a lot of fully automated. Very careful with fully automated solutions. Fully penetration automated. Fully verification automated. That fully automated, be careful with those fully automated because that should not be always fully automated in our defensive strategy. From the offensive side, from the vendor's side, it's great. Right? As a vendor, I can fully automate and have 2,000 customers fully automated. That's great for the vendors. For we as organizations, we need to be ready and carefully measure what is fully automated, to be able to have those controls in place, to have visibility and logging about what's going on during these critical deployments.
Yeah, and I think it's very important. Security teams are given the opportunity to sort of tackle some of these challenges sort of hands-on, as opposed to relying on tools, especially given that we all know that sometimes security can reach a point of tedium or fatigue. And it is very important that organizations are perhaps practicing their defense strategies, disaster recovery, for instance, and business continuity. I think with them sitting back with their feet up, being reliant on tools that are fully automated, is going to allowing for them to perhaps degenerate in terms of their capabilities. I think with organizations perhaps struggling to attract talent because talent at the moment in the marketplace is certainly looking for organizations that are perhaps innovating and using security as an enabler.
Right.
If you're stifling that innovation by being solely reliant on the tools, there's not going to be opportunities to attract and retain talent in the sort of long run. So Dan, from your experience, how can CISOs as C-suite leaders align security investment with broader business objectives to maximize overall effectiveness and, of course, to get a better return on investment?
Yeah, I think that there are two things. First one is to pick wise technology, right? That's the first thing. You need to have technology that helps you as a CISO in order to comply with your business strategy. So technology-wise, as I said, you need to think about proactive is great. You have that for the last 20 years, but you need to start thinking about early detection technologies. Yeah? You need to go out to the market and search for early detection technologies, as we discussed in this scenario. And everyone, at the end of the day, as we know, it needs to be a risk-based approach, as CISO knows very well, because at the end of the day, with all this whole thing in mind, they need to prioritize what they need to go and fix. But in order to fix, you need to have something to verify that everything is going smooth and as expected. So that's the third thing. Once you have your technology, your strategy on the proactive and early detection, then you need to have something to verify that technology is working as expected, that your policies and processes are working as expected from a risk-based approach, in order for them to prioritize what needs to be fixed in the next round immediately,
Makes sense. Do you think that security teams and leaders should perhaps take it a step further by mapping against their competitors or peers in the space, as opposed to just relying on risk scores matched against their OWASP top 10, for instance?
Yeah, definitely. I think there is a very good point there, because sometimes there is something that we call in Metabase Q is like collective defense. And collective defense is an approach that US works on that very well. LATAM is still going on. Not sure about Europe, but basically what that means is that even you are a CISO from one organization and you are from another organization, this collective defense means how we can talk about each other, how we can share information, not necessarily the confidential one, but more about threats, more about campaigns, and about what we can know from each other in order about technologies, about that you are using that is going better for you, is working better for you, about what issues you are having in terms of threats hitting your organization. And that collective defense is the way you can, as a team, also share strategies as the attackers does. Keep in mind that the attackers are always teaming up. They are always teaming up, sharing infrastructure, sharing technologies and tools. But in our side, it's like, I don't want to talk to this guy or to this guy. So this sharing between us on technologies and on infrastructure, and something that is not confidential. Always the confidential side of the house is always kept away. But if you can share that intelligence that can help you to prevent an attack that happens in the neighborhood, that it can prevent you from happening in your side, and in the same way, when you share with the other guys, that's collective defense that is very important for us to push as the world man in security, not only a country.
No, and we certainly feel that's crucially important. That's one of the main drivers for us actually established from the Secure Cyber Connect community, right, to encourage that cross-sector collaboration, enhance community cohesion. Because we see it as something that's vitally important. It's conversation with myself and Jay have many boards on regular occasions that need to be collaborating more and getting diverse perspectives from across the industry.
Sure.
I think DORA is a great example. We spoke about that quite often. And I think within DORA, there's an accountability set within organizations. If they do see a new threat within the community or sort of ecosystem, they've got a limited amount of time to report that and share that information. I think that's amendment to DORA at the moment. I think that's brilliant because it puts the accountability on organizations, because I think historically, a lot of them have sort of kept that knowledge to themselves with a view of loose lips sink ships, whereas it shouldn't be like that.
Exactly. And people get afraid from, hey, I don't want to share that I was compromised. I mean, that's not the issue, because by the way, by law, today, you need to disclose those things based on the country, different countries, but today by law, you need to disclose those things, but you're not disclosing the bug. You're not disclosing how they get compromised. It's like, hey guys, this is a domain, this is the malicious domains This is the malicious IPs. All the malicious stuff is what you are sharing. You are sharing malicious stuff for me to block those domains. If I am your neighbor and I know that these guys are hitting from these domains, for example, I can block those domains right away in order to wait for them to attack my organization. So you are sharing the malicious stuff and nothing related to the confidential stuff. So that's very important, because once you understand that, then it's easier to talk to those guys. In fact, sharing in that sense information that is not confidential for them.
Yeah, and I was having a conversation a few weeks back with the former sort of head of threat intelligence with the FBI, and we were talking about the adversary sort of groups out there. So that has been their competitive advantage to date, the fact that they share knowledge and best practices amongst themselves, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Today, for example, I belong to a group in US, which is called Crimeware. It's a very famous group. Everyone in security is there. All the vendors and the companies are there. So this is a huge group. It's called Crimeware. And it's like you can get to that group only if someone vouch for you. It's not like you just get in. If someone needs to, like, you have a 2 or 3 people needs to vouch for you so that you can be accepted. And then once inside, it's like these vendors and organizations sharing what we just mentioned in order to be proactive.
Yeah, so dark web sort of monitoring services, that sort of thing. I think there are, a few AI solutions come to market that are hopefully sort of going to help to enable that.
Exactly.
We certainly need to be thinking like the attackers and perhaps attacking them, but not in too much of a provocative way.
Exactly. Right.
So I think Dan, one of the other important things we wanted to discuss was your thoughts on sort of agent versus agentless solution. Maybe give our audience an outline of what the sort of key differences are between the two, and I suppose which approach is better suited for sort of specific types of environments and threats.
That's a huge one, Jay. And audience, maybe someone is going to hate me and someone is going to love me, but I mean, that's a huge discussion, guys. Agents, an agent for the audience. When we talk about agent, it's a software that you need to install in the endpoint. An endpoint is in a computer, right? That's a software you need to install in a computer. The typical example is an antivirus, right? You need to have an agent in the company, which is this antivirus, which is running to monitor everything that's going on in your company, in your PC or your asset. So that's an agent. And agentless meaning that you can monitor those systems without this software installed in the system. That's agent and agentless. Now, when it comes down to do I need an agent or agentless? The first thing companies says is, hey, I already have too many agents and I don't want to have another agent. And another agent into my organization, I need to maintain it, I need to deploy it, I need to update it, those things. Okay. But it depends, in my opinion. That's my sole opinion, is just keep in mind that. So it depends on what you're trying to protect. Okay. So when you think about ransomware, let's talk about ransomware. So how ransomware is triggered? Ransomware is triggered by someone by mistake or by collaborating. Can be an insider that is collaborating. Just double click on something inside the organization. And when they double click on something, they go visit a website and then go and get infected and all the whole incident. But it was a click inside your system, right? That's the first thing. So when you think about how you can fight ransomware, there is no way for you to be outside of the PC and trying to monitor what's going on, or trying to, like in our case, the short PT, which triggers ransomwares inside the asset, right? So it's the double clicking that is triggering the initial infection. That's the way that you can trigger it and then start looking at the EDR, the antivirus, and all the solutions, see if those can detect it. The only way to trigger is by having a ransomware inside the asset, the PC or the endpoint, and then trigger it from inside, right? That's the only way. When you think about ransomware in that sense, and someone comes and says, hey, I have a solution that measures that you can detect ransomware agentless. So my question, and this is just, you don't need to tell me if you agree or not. Just the question is, how come a solution that doesn't have an agent in a PC it can trigger a ransomware and then see if that's even is being detected or not by your technologies. There is no way. So there is, as a summary, it depends on what you're protecting. If you are going after, like CRPT, that is going after generating simulations of ransomware inside your network, must have an agent that is triggering that ransomware, which is this double clicking inside. When you think about other kind of solutions, definitely there must be agentless. So as a summary, I would say that it depends of what you are trying to protect. It must have agentless. But it's very important for CISOs because CISOs sometimes is like, "Hey, don't put an agent inside." That's totally fine. But first, focus on what you're trying to protect. I was in a company back in the day that, just to close this, I was in a company that we were trying to protect ransomware. And we were only network-based solution, right? We were only seeing the traffic going on in the network. Since we were not inside those PCs, we have no way to protect against a ransomware because that takes place inside. We only see encrypted traffic. By sitting in the network as an agentless, we have no way to protect against ransomware. So that's an example of a solution that is focused on network-based and it's not focused on a ransomware protection. You know? That would be my difference in this angle, guys.
Well, it's certainly going to be a hotly debated topic, I'm sure, on many further discussions within the sector amongst many CISOs.
Right.
So look, I mean, Dan, we're sort of coming towards the back end of things now. We want to maybe get a few kind of quick fire questions over and get a bit of practical advice and insights from you in terms of sort of navigating this dynamic world of cyber. And what do you think some of the sort of most underestimated risks within cybersecurity are today? What and I guess what are some of the common mistakes that startups should avoid within their early strategies?
Yeah, the first mistake that I can see is typical one is that they are focused on the product delivery, the go-to-market strategy, which is great. Obviously, they need money, but they sometimes it's very funny because there is a security company, but they are not doing their security code practicing. They are not following what we aim to do outside. Like, hey, you need to do pen testing on your product. You need to do secure code reviews on your product. You need to secure your cloud. You need to be compliant with the cloud, with SOC 2, as AWS or whatever compliance request. So that's the first mistake that I see, that when you try to go to market so fast that you forget about having an issues in your product. And I'm going to talk about so one issue that happens in one of the companies that I work on. I mean, it's a public one, it's a known one. I'm not going to mention the company just because I love them, but it's a public one. But my point is that after 10 years of running the company, there was an old bug sitting inside. And once one of the researchers took the box, the physical box, take it to his home, found that bug, which was 10 years ago. So that's like something that is very common that we see. And that's what my first recommendation. Like, even though you want to go to market as a startup, which is good, you want to meet the target for the investors, that's great. But you need to also be the example as a cybersecurity company to have in-house security strategies. I would say that was my main one, if we want to pick one in my top 5.
Enough. And I mean, in terms of your experience in building and leading teams and driving that innovation, what would you say is maybe one key skill or even a mindset shift that you think has been crucial in your own success?
Right. Yeah, I think that first of all, you need to know your competitors, right? I mean, to me, when I was sitting in and creating the CRPT, the first thing I understand was what I need to solve. You need to solve something. And that's something that when I created Newman back in 2018, we were trying to protect against attacks in smart cars. And when we're sitting with VCs, they were like, man, I love your idea, but I don't see any attacks coming into the cars today. I mean, that might happen, but today there is nothing you need to protect. Hey, yeah, guys, but it's going to come. Yes, it's going to come, probably. But there is nothing today to protect. That was an understanding for me that you need to solve something that is today an issue, not something that might happen in the future. That's a different thing. So the first thing, you need to solve something in your mindset, right? Once you have something that you want to protect, The second thing is what is in the market. There is nothing that is new today, guys. There is nothing that is new. It's already existed. It's more than the way you are creating it. So you need to understand what is in the market already, how you are different from those guys. You don't want to follow those guys. It's like, hey, I'm looking at the competitors and they have A, B, and C features, and then I want to implement A, B, C features. You're going to start just following them. You need to start from scratch, like going into a different direction. Same solution, same problem, but different direction. If you start mimicking what they are doing, you already started wrong. That's why in SurePT, when I started working on it, I detected that, okay, breach and attack simulations are there for the last 10 years. It's great. And they focus on checking technologies. That's great. But what about the processes? What about once the insider is there compromising the systems, the dual time that takes from infection to the SOC, security operations team, to realize there is an infection? That's a measure that you need to make sure to check, because otherwise, in that moment, it's going to be exfiltrated the data. It's going to then compromise your organization. The longer, the worse, right? So then I focus on a feature, one of the many features, one feature to, okay, I need to have in my product something that measure the dwell time and make sure to tell you which are the scenarios once the technology didn't work. We can measure the time that takes for your blue team to realize there's an infection. So that's an idea of how you can focus on your competitors, what's the difference, and focus on those differentiators as an initial strategy to create a new product. And then motivation with the team. The final thing is, who is going to build this for you? You need to have the best of the best. And at the end of the day, the best must be people that following your strategy. Is not coming for the money. I mean, money is there. That's fine. But it's not about the money. It's about the motivation. It's about like, hey, guys, so we need to solve this problem worldwide. We need to have organizations sitting in our hands to be able to rely on us. So that motivation comes down into the smart people, which you need to find them. But the soft skills from that smart people is even more important than the hard skills, which is the technical aspect. You know what I mean? That's all very important.
That's really interesting. Appreciate you sharing. And what other sort of challenges are you perhaps seeing in the VC space at the moment? Probably putting your business hat on as opposed to a security and technology cap.
Yeah, I think the one thing is, as I said, you need to have something that investors need to look at your product and they need to see something different, right? Because otherwise there is no point for them to invest even time. Forget about money, even just time to sit with them. So we have great investors in our side. That's exactly the idea. Like, how come SurePT, so that it's just part of a platform? The platform is called Batuta. So when we talk about our VCs, one point that you just mentioned is how we can approach them to tell them that this is something different. That's very important for us. That's something that is going to attract them in just talk to you. That's the first thing, that you need to be different. You need to think about how you can show them that your approach is different from whatever it is in the market. It's already there, already exists, but your approach is different. So that's why we have like a defensive and offensive into one platform. Boom. Okay. So we can see that there is offensive in one side, defensive in one side, but you have a platform which has offensive and defensive. Okay. Let's talk about it. So you get the 5 minutes for your elevator pitch. So that's what you got them. But then the go-to-market strategy, right? Like, how long is going to take? The typical question: how long is going to take for me to get my money back? What market are you targeting, right? So your market is another thing. Is your market 30% in US, and out of that market, what is your target in the next year? So that's very important. The go-to-market and what piece of the cake are you going to get back as soon as possible? I think that's also another very important. That comes down with the market. Like, if you are in a market that your solution is on demand, or you are enough to get that demand, and the validation for your product, I think that's huge for VCs to be on your idea.
No, that's brilliant. And something that we encounter quite a lot with some of the boards and the portfolios that we converse with is the fact that they find organizations, in particular startups and scale-ups, that can demonstrate a base level security more attractive to bring into their, because they don't want to jeopardize that ecosystem. But we're also seeing startups bring on CTOs, for instance, and the expectation is that CTO wears many hats until the business reaches a certain level, and the CTO effectively is the CISO of the business as well. So what I'm curious to gain from your perspective, Dan, is that Do you think organizations should be doing that and bootstrapping it and allowing individuals to perhaps wear many hats? Or do you think startups should be looking at fractional service providers or SSPs to support from a security standpoint?
Yeah, I think it can be a combination. I mean, it's not one way or the other way. So I think it's always what you're targeting. When you talk about the CISOs, for example, that comes back to also the team. Another thing that I just missed is the team. VCs look at the team. Who is behind the team building this new product, right? So CTOs, the CISOs, the CEO, is these guys already with exits that they already succeed back in the day. So that's very important. And that comes down with either it's going to be either from MSSPs or you're going to get help from others or you're going to be your own stack of technology. That depends on what you're targeting, but more important is the team that you're building. Now, keep in mind that what if I don't have an exit, right? What if it's my first startup and then that doesn't really mean I need to have an exit. So that's a very important point. So at the end of the day, I think that the team behind in a startup is very important to show them as I said, the go-to-market strategy to show the difference of your product that is different in the market, and then the return of the investment, right? Like how long it's going to take for them to get back their money. I think that's more important in the first year, and then hitting into what infrastructure or what integrations or what third party we're going to build as initial focus step.
And look, Dan, I mean, it's been fascinating listening to you, and we appreciate the perspective and the passion you've shown on a lot of the topics we've discussed today. And to sort of finish things off, would you be sort of kind enough to share a little bit more about Metabase Q and your journey into the business, some of the challenges that you're currently working to solve, and maybe a bit about the sort of vision and what the future holds for you guys?
Yeah, thank you so much, Jay, for the opportunity. So at Metabase Q, as we mentioned, so we start from creating a platform that we think around the lines of, is there something in the market that has the offensive and defensive in the same place? So that was our first thought. And then we saw that we were having solutions on the BaaS market. You can attack, it's all alone in the offensive side. And then we see the patching and deployment and everything in the left side. And that defensive side is great technologies. But what about both of these guys in the same place? So that was what we focus on, right? And trying to see this platform which has offensive and defensive side. And that helped us to bring the Sim Ventures VCs, for example, for us to track them. And then now what we do is basically having this resilience, like having a way to give visibility to the organizations on the assets so that they can see what they have. They can switch between technologies really fast. And they can deploy these technologies. Let's suppose there is an attack going on, and then the EDR is being bypassed, and that's it, it's being bypassed. So, but this Batuta, which is our technology, can go and switch and trigger another technology right away into your organization, and then save the remaining assets in your organization. That's deployment fast, right? So that's like the defensive side of the platform. But then you need to have these resilience scores. You need to have visibility on what is the host-based risk that you have in your organization. You need to, then is the offensive side. You go in with a SharePT, you do ransomware, you do CVEs attacks, you do everything on those different hosts, and then you realize the technology that is working fine, the technology that has blind spots in your organization, and then you also have, apart from the technology, the side where you need to measure the dwell time that you mentioned, that once the technology is not working, that's fine. But let's talk about your process. How, is your SOC responding at 3 a.m.? Is your technology being configured properly to be able to trigger detection? So that's what triggers as a second part. And to close this whole thing, once we have these old issues, let's mitigate them. We realize that now the companies, once we found many things, they don't have time. They are focused on the operations on a daily basis. You cannot bring 40 more issues to the organizations and then they go and try to fix them. It's going to happen eventually. But we realize that we can help them to mitigate from the platform. Then you're having a visibility, you're finding issues, and you're mitigating those issues as soon as you find them. And then you have this cycle going on. That's defensive and offensive side in the same platform.
And where do you see things going for the future now for the business? What does the future look like for you guys?
That's awesome. We started on Latin. Actually, we started in Mexico, then we go all the way to Latin. Now we're moving to USA. So we have, as I said, Sim Ventures, which is like rock stars, man. There, if you allow me, John Waters and Ryan Permet, those rock stars in cybersecurity, they look at us for some reason. And we're so humble that these guys look at us and trust us. Those guys are exit guys, that Silence and Mandiant and those things. So by looking at us, it's a huge responsibility for us. We're doing something different, and we're going now into US, guys. And with you guys, we're going to Europe as also.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a very exciting time for the business. And for all our listeners who want to stay connected sort of with you beyond this podcast and beyond the Cyber Connect platform, where else can they reach out to you, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, you have my email. It's right there. You can find me in LinkedIn. We can post it in this podcast, my link on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is the best way. You can ping me there. We can connect there. I'm happy to chat with you guys. We're going to throw some webinars also. I'm going to post them all in LinkedIn. So that's the way for me to look out at and to connect with me, guys.
And us getting you back on the Secure Cyber Connect podcast, perhaps for a sort of a live masterclass of some sort, or you sharing some horror stories. Is that something you're happy to do in the near future?
Yeah, no, definitely, guys. I think that, by the way, Cyber Connect, also kudos for you guys. I think this is something that is needed, and you are connecting the world. And then we're going to do masterclasses. We can do webinars. I mean, I think this is a huge idea, guys. And we're totally humble and happy to contribute with you guys, this huge podcast. And I really think you're going to hit it also really nice and great in the market. So we are going to be doing many things, guys, with you, definitely, in the near future.
That's great. And Dan, is there a new book in the works? Or is this one?
Yeah, a very good one. I think I finished the 4th and 5th edition. Then my wife was about to divorce me. And then it was like, okay, well, yeah, this is something that when you asked me the first question, I was thinking of something that no one knows in LinkedIn. When I was trying to write the next chapter, I look at my work and my wife and my family. I was too many things on my belt. And I was like, I mean, I think I need time for my family. It's very important, guys. Family is very important. So, and then I decided to stop writing books. It's too hard, guys. It's too much work. And I did it twice. And it's like 6 months writing, guys. It's crazy. So then I decided to stop for now to have more family time better than that.
No, that's good. And I think it's really important to have that balance, especially within sort of technology landscape. The burnout and your mental health is a very important factor. And look, we're in a digital age now. It's easy to sort of disseminate information on videos and podcast sessions like this. So I'm confident we can get a book's worth out of you for the coming month.
Exactly. And probably the time that I was about to spend in a book and really focus on building this RPT technology. And that time is focused on my daily basis, on my working hours. And that's it.
Well, Dan, thank you. Huge thank you for on behalf of myself and Warren, and of course the community and all our listeners. We're certain that you found some value in today's recording. To continue the discussion and for some more sustained engagement, as always, we invite you to join the Secure Cyber Connect community. We're going to be offering a range of collaborative solutions for technology and security professionals at no cost. These will, as before, include expansive community access, cross-sector mutual mentoring programs, weekly online networking sessions, and a range of exclusive interviews, panel discussions, and masterclasses. To learn more and to gain access to the Secure Cyber Connect community and all of our initiatives, please visit secure-recruitment.com/cyber-connect/. Thank you very much.